Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity. Your support really does make a huge difference. You'll find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org/contribute. Thank you so much.
I just want to say how delicious it is to be here in this space and to see everybody and to be with my beloved teaching partner once again. And so I'm just filled with joy. My heart is just bursting open being here. And I'm really, really grateful for this opportunity. So, Flint and I have a kind of different kind of Dharma experience planned for you. Not really planned, right? We were talking yesterday, and I had made some notes that I shared with Flint, and he felt that maybe it would be great if we had a dialogue about these ideas, and that then we would have an opportunity to share with you what your thoughts were. So
we have these, I mean, over the however many years we've been together, we'll sit at that back table and have a cup of tea and talk about things, and she'll say something and I'll say, but that's it, and then we have these great dialogues. It's like, that would be a good talk, if we would have recorded. So we thought, why don't we have one in front of you on the edge? We'll see how it goes. And the topic will be apropos to this very thing. But we had done, I had thought a little bit, but Peg had also done some planning in the usual sacred space prior to meeting like this, the airplanes. when you're
airplane zendo.
Because you're no one can get to you. It's just you and your little space, and you're in the nowhere. And it's kind of an interesting time for creativity, actually.
Yeah.
Oddly.
And that's how I had these thoughts.
So then we'll start with those, and we'll go from there.
We'll go from there, yeah. So I was thinking about the issue of trust. And I thought we cannot live together without trust. Even mistrust is based on trust. Trust in our own perceptions and our own interpretations of other people's motives and what the situation is. So in coming here, I had to trust that my neighbor would be able to take care of my dog. I had to arrange for a cab to the airport. I had to trust that the online reservation form would work, that the internet would actually convey it, that a driver would arrive on time to get me to the airport. Sitting in the cab, I had to trust that the driver knew the route, could drive safely, had no malign intentions toward me, driving in the dark through isolated areas. I had to trust that a deer would not jump in front of the car, that the fog would not blind other drivers who would run into us, that the other drivers would follow the rules of the road, that we would not be slowed by traffic or construction or some terrible accident. All that before we even get to the airport. I'm describing all this not because I'm fearful, but because we tend to be rather unconscious of the many dependencies we rely on just in our everyday lives. The forms of those everyday lives are what enable us to have a sense of freedom, unencumbered by constant decision-making and ongoing anxiety and hypervigilance, right? There are forms for transporting ourselves from one place to another, forms for organizing traffic, for ordering food in a restaurant, for checking a book out of the library. Most of these we take for granted, and we expect others to generally follow these forms too. This reduces friction and uncertainty so that we can attend to driving a car, reading a book, enjoying a meal. We discover when we travel differences in local forms compared to the familiar ones at home. They may seem strange, even uncomfortable at first, but adaptive species that we are, with time they grow familiar too. And because we are also a social species, we seek accord with others. The forms help us see how to do that. Forms and observing forms thus orients us in our situation and in our relating with others. What seems strange and even off-putting at first becomes our path to acceptance and belonging. We've all experienced this shift. Our first day at school, getting a driver's license, moving to a new neighborhood, getting a new job, or joining a club. Our first task is to learn the forms and navigate them. Our Zen forms are like this too, a way to connect us and invite us into belonging, to this profound path of wisdom and compassion, to our own inner light, and to each other. When we have become familiar with the forms, they seem natural, obvious, even intuitive. Then we become a resource and a support for others. So those were my, random thoughts on the plane. So I started talking to Flint about that and about the ways that we navigate with a lot of unconscious layers of trust, right? In our lives, just making assumptions and the way we know that is when those assumptions somehow don't prove to be accurate, right? That's when we begin to recognize, oh, I had assumed this,
That we began to talk a bit about the word and the idea and the concepts that we hold about trust itself. It's kind of close to faith. It's another one. And where to place our trust, and how that sometimes, and it's woven into what Peg was saying, it's associated with safety too. I trust that things will be okay, the bad things won't happen in the travel. One of the things that I find it more difficult to trust in these days is my memory. Anyone else like that? I was just last week I was going over all my travel plans to make sure I was all set, and I was shocked to learn that I had completely forgotten to make any inter-island flights. Like, I had flights from Honolulu to here and back home, but I didn't get off of Molokai. And it was only a week, and those little 9-seater planes that go every now and then, unreliably, so you can't always trust. It's like, oh my God, I didn't make any inter-island flights, so luckily I was able to get them, and they were on time. At least they got me here. I don't know if I went back. I sometimes don't even trust what I wish I could trust all the time, is my memory and perceptions and thoughts. And this is what practice helps us begin to really reflect on deeply, not to mistrust ourselves, but to begin to get a feel for the way in which we put faith in our own perceptions and memories and things like that, so that we don't treat them as the truth. They're a way for us to approach and approximate what this is. We were talking about texts and other things in Zen that talk about trust, and of course we immediately thought of the Shinshin Ming, trust in mind or faith in mind. And as I was sitting this morning, that line came to me about all at once there's nothing left to hold on to. You can trust the universe completely. Wait a minute. You can trust the universe completely when there's nothing left to, when we set down all of the ways in which we individually put ourselves at the center. There's some fabric. When I was teaching at Awakening Together in Minneapolis just recently, so I know Marla's here, maybe a few other people, I talked about a term that came from David Hinton, who's a writer about Chan Buddhism quite a bit, and he talked about the existence tissue. I love that image. And it's just another way of talking about this, I don't know, internet, but it seemed more embodied, the existence, the tissue of existence in which it holds us, the fabric that holds us. And so we begin to have trust in something that isn't quite so personal, and yet we're only here because of it. And the forms are ways to, as Peg said, to kind of wake up and realize how we're held. All at once, there's nothing left to hold on to. We can trust the universe completely. So there's something to rest and that isn't about me, that I've constructed or that I can actually cling to, and yet I'm held. And that's kind of a different kind of trusting, I think. And now I can say more about stuff, but what are you thinking now?
I was thinking about what just precedes that, which is let go of self-doubt.
Yeah,
Because you can trust the universe completely, you know, like all this second guessing ourselves, all of that.
Build up that self that we can trust.
Yeah, I'm trying to, yeah. And then we were talking about, you know, since nothing is permanent and everything is empty, what is it you put your trust in? You know, it would have to be something like a process or a practice or something, or, you know, something that isn't a thing, right? But in your capacity to meet what comes up, or in the process of this path that you're on, right? And I think more collectively, you know, how do we have trust in each other? How do we come to have trust in each other? That has to be fostered and built over time. That's not something you just walk in the door and suddenly you trust everybody, right? It's built up through tiny, tiny interactions and experiences together over time. And in the course of which we let each other down, we disappoint each other, we make mistakes, we do stupid things, we say wrongful things, and we have to trust the relationship or the relationality to be resilient enough to hold all of those stupid gaffes and missteps
And trust and repair.
and trust and repair. Yeah, and I think it's, you know, thinking collectively, I think it's very, very, very important right now when there are so many societal forces bent on destroying our trust in each other. There's
Very simple,
so much,
simple things
yes,
about is this actually real? What you're seeing or hearing.
yeah. You know, I was talking to my doctor and I said, Big Pharma squandered the public trust. They've squandered it because of their greed, because of their, you know, malign intentions. So that's why people are resistant to vaccinations. That's why they don't believe in doctors, because it's actually that trust that once existed has been dismantled. And it wasn't just the pandemic, although that did create a lot of mistrust between people, because anybody could be, you know, a contaminant. Anybody could, you know, be your death sentence, really. So there was a you know, sort of erosion of the sort of taken for granted. You walk past people on the street, you know, and there's crowds of people on a sidewalk, you would even think twice about it before the pandemic, right? The pandemic, all of a sudden, you're like, any of these people could be, you know, carrying COVID.
The person I love and want to come close to could kill me.
Exactly.
Kind of a weird thing.
Exactly. So there's been this giant corrosion, I think, or dismantling of our trust in each other. And this is what, to me, makes the Sangha so incredibly important, because it's an arena for holding that kind of trust.
Yeah, I'll say for me, when I walked in a day or two ago, well, first I walked up and there was someone sweeping with their back to me. And I wasn't completely familiar with the back. I was, you know how you start figuring out who it is, you know, immediately. Until she turned, it was Nellie. It's like, oh, I don't know Nellie in this context and here, you know. It's like, oh, but I know her, and I've been with her in person in Europe, but
Yeah.
in England. So that was beautiful, and we had a talk, and then I came inside, and it was during the ordinary day when there was no one here. And just to walk in the space, everything comes flooding in, and it was so beautiful. I mean, everything was so clean and taken well care of. It's like, oh, I can trust that there's something here that over time I have become accustomed to. And when I'm not here and come back, you know the feeling, when you go back someplace and you feel a bit dear, but it's also true when I look in your faces or give you a hug. There's something that's there. I felt it again when we were opening the Zendo, And I said earlier, I said, why don't you open and I'll be your Jisha. So that will be nice, but it'll also, people can watch and see the form. And so, Peg came forward, she did her bow, and she waited, and then she trusted that there would be a stick of incense in front of her in a moment. And that I would trust that the candle had been lit by the person, and there would be a stick of incense there. These are the small things. We've been talking about these big things. But that's not just so things go well here. Enacting that stuff over and over begins to help us understand the uprightness and the beauty of the forms, which informs us in some way. I find it really, it's my own personal edge. When I've taught in situations where many things were being, like a yoga retreat or psychotherapy training, where there's lots of activity and people really offering stuff. And then it's my turn to have people sit, and they're like, okay, just sit. I feel like I don't offer anybody anything. On the outside, it doesn't look like there's anything happening. And we could go into that further, but what I began to realize is our silence, upright sitting in Zazen, is in this fabric of all the other forms. And it's not just the Zazen that teaches, really. It's enacting universal awareness and consciousness in our body. And then when we walk together and we offer the incense, we do the chants, all of that weaves a fabric that we come to have confidence in over time. And that the sitting is both a reflection of and a repository for. Does this make sense what I'm saying? So if you take Zazen just out of the whole practice, it seems like no big deal, like teach me to meditate. It's like, well, I could, and this is what it would mean to step into a community and embody all of this. Yeah, I could teach you, mindfulness and labeling, all those things, that's true. If you want to understand the heart of Zen practice, you have to step into the communal expression of it. And then Zazen comes alive in some ways, and we'll be talking about that. That's why the forms and our focus on Zazen here this time is going to be really important.
I've always felt it was really important, a certain continuity, not because nothing is stable, but a certain continuity, I would say, of intention and principle. And so when I came in the beginning, I could see everywhere I looked, the things I had chosen and placed and cared for with great love, still in place, still attended to, still cared for. And that was my whole vision, to provide some continuity of care so that people could begin to rest in that, could begin to trust it and begin to trust each other. So that even though, we're, works in progress, all of us, and make our dumb mistakes, as I said, that we can hold together that container of trust in which all of that can move, in which all of that can be part of the life of the community, the life of the Sangha.
I said to Peg, tell that story about Joko.
Oh.
Like when you first went to practice in the very beginning, when you were a beginner.
Yeah, the very first thing I ever said to her was, I just don't want to annoy people.
Because she didn't know any of the forms.
I knew, and I just don't want to annoy anybody. And she said, that's your job. She said, if other people are new, they won't know you're doing anything wrong. And the experienced people get to work with their judging mind. Whoa, okay. That was immensely relieving. Because even though her Zendo was not like a formal Japanese temple, still, there were forms.
Like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like that story you've all heard about when I was asked to be on the bell for a memorial service in the afternoon when we just learned that one of Blanche's family members had died. At San Francisco Zen Center, I was there, And she just heard this at the end of afternoon zazen, and she said, we have to do a memorial service now. And instead of the service that I knew how to do, we were gonna chant the Daihi Shindarani and all this others, like, that was my job. And so I did the bells as best I could, and they weren't right, and I'm like, oh, you know, but we finished with dignity, you know, and later in the hall, Blanche and I passed each other. She said, the bell was okay, the face was extra. And what's really important is she didn't say the face was wrong. She didn't say you did a wrong thing, even in the bell. It wasn't at the right place, but that wasn't the point. But my reactivity was like, it was extra. It wasn't required to have that on top. Just pay attention and see. And it's not that different in some ways than what Joko was saying.
Yeah.
So we invite people to be wholehearted. I mean, everybody, if you're doing something, and you know, you can go to the right and wrong if you want, and it's useful to do your best to try to align yourself with the forms, but that wholehearted intention in the alignment is really the focus of, because how are we going to be aligned? What's it like to be aligned with reality? This is just a way to practice that so that you can have trust that life holds us, and that it will go forward. That you can trust that you'll do really well at certain times, and you'll trust that things will go wrong, and then you can actually trust dying. You can do that perfectly fine.
Reminds me of Suzuki saying to the student, no mistake, next time do different.
That wonderful story that Josh told the other day in an inquiry about the Japanese landscape architect who was evaluating, or they were asking him to look at this beautiful garden that he had not designed, but he loved it, and he was talking about how beautiful. But he was in like a park or a special place, so there was a vending machine on one side. The guy said, well, what about the vending machine? And this Japanese guy said, oh, except. Sometimes it's that, you know?
Yeah.
Just accept.
It's another form of trust.
It is.
It's another form of trust. It's that deep acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And actually it's the third of the paramitas.
That's right. And I think we build up a sense of trust with each other. Especially if we have a problem and we worked it out, it gives us a little credibility, you know, like, oh, okay.
It strengthens.
Yeah, things sometimes can go wrong, but I trust that you're willing to talk to me about it, or we're willing to say, oh yeah, I guess I did let you down there, or I didn't get that right. Instead of having to defend, just be curious about
That was so huge in my relationship with you, because in my family, if somebody does something wrong, we never talk about it again. It's not discussed.
You just hold it.
You just hold it. You just like move on. Like it was never something you could work out. Either the person was just mad at you, and that was too bad, you know, like, or you know, we're just not going to talk about it at all. And so I think in a lot of families there isn't a kind of understanding of how to do that kind of working through things.
And then you get characterized by that.
Right.
Oh, she's like that.
Right,
or he's
exactly.
like that.
Exactly. You get these family labels. So, yeah.
And in the Sangha, same way.
Same way, yeah. I mean, but at least in the Sangha we know explicitly this is where we work these things out. This is not a place to reinstate our family dynamics, which.
Although they will come up.
Well, they will come up, but we're not going to certify them.
It's like, someone had said the other day, you know, you like swag, you know, like get stuff, you know, but you have a cap, you should have caps, and on it I can see the logo, and you would say, oh. With that kind of question mark, and it's
Yes,
like,
perfect. Oh.
We'll see, you know.
Yeah, it's.
Instead of like, oh. We know those.
Once we trust that we can have a process for continuing our relating, even in the face of some difficulty or some conflict or disagreement, that builds trust across the whole community. And we know that we can turn to someone else when we're struggling or trying to figure something out or having a problem, and we can get some kind of reflection or some sense of support and encouragement in working things through. And that's what we can do for each other. It's the exact opposite of gossiping, you know, and the kind of backbiting things that happen in a lot of communities. It's the exact opposite of that.
So right speech goes in there.
Yeah, right speech goes right in there, and right effort, and right view, and right understanding, and right intention. Right intention is my favorite. Partly because in my family of origin, motives were always imputed to you, and they were always malign. They were never your, and so you would have this kind of disconnect between what you thought your motives were and the way they were reflected back to you. And then because the big people are smarter than you, you're like, well, that must be the case then. I must have only done this to get attention. Well, who knew, you know? And this is how we come to doubt our own minds.
I think that's one of the most beautiful things I realized when I first came to practice and wanted to take the precepts and do Jukai, and then they did this thing of leaving Dharma names. It's like, I didn't know about that. And so I asked Blanche about that. She said, yeah, when we give the 4 character name, it's like the first 2, it's often like what a person sees in you. But, you know, if you think the way the family was, it's like, oh, bad? No, it was like a good quality.
Yeah.
Or something that one sees in you. And then the second name has something to do with what they also see as possible for further fluorescence or, you know, development. And it's like, oh, I could be seen like that. And it could be the way that I'm seen, and what's encouraged would be something wholesome and in alignment with one's true nature. So that's why it's useful to practice, to open and to sit without this endeavor to try to be something or to make up for something.
Yeah.
But to know that that's always already done, and that you can sit and really express it.
Or even sometimes we're trying to compensate, you know, like, like I, for many years, had the belief that no matter how much I thought I wanted to be good-hearted, I actually was going to end up destroying people. So no matter how many things I did that were positive, sooner or later I was going to either disappoint them or horrify them or something, you know, so it'd be some destruction. And so it was really difficult to come to a point of like wanting to actually have any intimacy with someone, because inevitably it was going to be even worse, right? It would be even worse when you disappointed them, when they were infuriated by something you said or did inadvertently, by whatever, right? And so to have the capacity to trust in the relationality in that process was very novel for me. Because I assumed that everyone, why would you have more friends? That's more people you're going to disappoint and destroy. You know, like,
Which is what you brought to Joko right away.
right away, yeah. So it's very interesting to me how we have these, you know, this inner conditioning around issues of trust. You know, a lot of us have trust issues because of the sort of patterns and dynamics in our early lives. And we have an opportunity when we have a sangha like this to create an entirely different internal structure of who we are and how we relate to people and what we're doing together, what it is we're trying to do together anyway.
And how this thing goes.
Yeah, and how this thing goes.
Another part of Sangha, I think, around trust is that people conflate this idea of trust, as I said earlier, with safety. Like, I would trust that this is a safe place. But everybody has very unique ideas about what a safety thing means. And often, I'm going to make it too simple, but people will say, okay, I can trust this place because I won't be triggered to feel bad here. It's like, well, no, it's not that kind of safe. It's not a place where nothing, because that's impossible. Everybody's touch points or trigger is always going to show up. It's a safe enough and a caring enough community in which you can be triggered and find a way through.
Yeah.
Because there's good intention and care. But it's not safe like, oh, nothing bad will happen here. Or no, nobody will get upset about things, or you won't, it's not that kind of false kind of safety.
I have to laugh when I think about the old Chan masters and how that concept would be so perplexing to them. It's intentionally unsafe. It's intentional. They're intentionally going to pull the rug out from under you. They're intentionally going to disabuse you of many of your fondest thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, they'd be sued for the stuff that they did.
Oh, absolutely. Cut off a student's finger?
Hit them, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We're never gonna do that, of course, that's not the point.
Because it helps people wake up. That was the whole point.
Yeah,
right?
but it's not even required.
No, it's not required.
Things get triggered all the time. It's like
Yeah.
the term we use sometimes in Nakomi, like life is a messy probe.
Yeah.
It's like, we're gonna be triggered. And that is revealing, because it shows us, oh, there's a place that I'm caught, or a place that is tender, or this shows me something about this relationship that I need to pay attention to in the relationship. It's not always me. There are things that happen that aren't so good from other people. And I need to know about that so I can respond to it with self-compassion, with clarity, with wisdom. And our practices and the forms that we engage in for the wholeness of training and shaping helps us be the kind of person who can operate in this way a little more easily, just a little more easily, and not create quite as much suffering for ourselves and others.
And then the trust I have in this process is that all of you will go out into the world carrying that and causing sort of ripples of trust, that can counter some of the damage that's being done, some of it quite intentionally, to our trust in each other.
Yeah, that's the darndest thing. When I, from my little place in Hawaii now, I'll listen to a Dharma talk or a way-seeking mind talk, or I'll watch one of the other teachers leading inquiry, or I'll see the classes that they're teaching, or read an email they're sending to invite. And it's like, oh my God, all these people are doing all this beautiful Dharma expression all over the world, that I always think of like, okay, I've got to do this, I've got to teach it. Like, it's all happening. How did that happen? It brings tears to my eyes. Like, it's overwhelming to think of how much you're actually doing it, but in just ordinary, everyday ways. It's like, oh, we set this in motion together. It's amazing. So a deeper trust then in something that's hard to put your finger on.
Yeah, I mean, this is, when we talk in our morning chant about taking refuge, this is taking refuge in Buddha, in the Buddha nature that's in us, each of us. Taking refuge in the teachings, taking refuge in the Sangha.
And just the way things naturally are, the lawful way of the universe.
And so it's such an expression of trust, really.
What's that good talking about?
Okay.
Or first, do you have any questions about what we're saying?
Or thoughts.
Or issues or complaints? Hi.
It reminds me, when I was maybe 20 years old, with my photo teacher, and he said to me, so suppose this photographer, like Paul Caponegro, you probably know of him, who would just come to visit, and they all told you were off on the wrong track, what would you do? And I kind of knew the answer I was supposed to give, I'd keep on with my thing, but I realized that there were many times when I was off on a track and I got discouraged, and I thought, oh, I'm not going to do that then, and I regret that. So it takes a lot of strength to have trust in yourself.
Yeah.
Even in the face of other people saying, no.
Yeah.
And like photography or other arts, this is a little bit like the old, come into the studio and copy the master so you find your way. So we do the forms, which is the copying, to find our way, to find our expression. And so when I see it, other people of y'all teaching, and it's like, oh, that's the expression, but you can see the essence in it. And if the essence is gone, then we say, hold on. So it's that combination of, yes, express yourself fully within the context of this. Small words? Do we do that? Anything online? How many do we have? There's 12.
Yeah.
Here, so do 3 pairs.
Trees. Yeah.
Okay, and then could you do breakout sessions with essentially 3 in just a moment?
Just once you get together, just take a moment and reflect about what is it that you actually put in question.
So this is a short conversation about it. Stephen, what do you interested in? What does this hold up for you in other words? So just enjoy being together for a little bit in that way. And if you come back and hear from you. So any reports from your small group that you'd like to share, or any curiosities or surprises, or
Something you heard that.
Well, I'm very relieved because I shared something that was from a council meeting, and I really I presented a request that could we change a form, or a form that wasn't happening, could we have that form? And but there was a feeling of unsafety in me that the form that I thought was to be followed wasn't being followed. So the way I presented it to the group was just really not the best it was. So I'm confused about why we're confused every time we start the meeting, which I said to the people I was with just now. It was like saying, what's wrong with you guys? And it didn't, well, a few people said, confusion's okay and things like that. And then someone came up with a middle way of the person that's responsible for the roles should just take it. We don't have to announce it, which was my request. Anyway, sharing this, way that I was feeling and the way that I handled it and the way that we all came together on it. I was just relieved to tell them I really thought that it's not the best way to make the request. So anyway, I feel really happy with the people I was with.
We continue to learn more.
Yeah, and people online, they were there, and Kim was there. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
In our group, we each had a different name for the same thing that we trusted.
Oh.
We came about it from a different perspective with a different kind of name for it, but it was really the essence was exactly the same thing.
Wow.
That was that went into my heart that way.
Yeah. And sometimes we have different names, we think we don't agree.
Yeah.
But if you stay with it, you realize, this is just facets of a diamond,
Yeah, exactly like
That's
that.
right.
May I share?
Anything.
Okay.
Thanks for asking for permission, that helps people trust.
Yeah.
Forever.
Kim said something that is going to help me change my languaging around trust. And that is, I trust people to be who they are.
Yeah.
And I know I can trust these people that when I share it, it'll remain confidential. And I can trust these people that when I share, it won't. And I love that languaging because it's a language of trust.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can trust in these patterns, and you can also trust that they might change. But that's wisdom. And
It
using
is.
the language of trust for those, I loved. So
Yeah.
thank you, Kim.
And instead of going back, this is the right way, this is the wrong way, these are the good ones, and these are the bad ones, I'm like, oh, I can trust them to be who they are. And then I can make decisions. I can trust myself to take care of myself in the situation.
Janelle, that's
Online, yes.
Oh, here we go. Thank you. I don't know, it looks like maybe we have less than 2 minutes left, but I was interested in your comment, Flint, on not conflating trust with safety. And it just occurred to me that at a time in my life when I had nothing left to hold on to, I felt the most trust in the universe. I mean, I felt something I'd never even imagined before. And yet, so then my brain is saying, but was I really okay? Because a lot of bad things happened after that. I suffered a lot of trauma. And then my next question was, well, what is okay? So I'm just sort of pondering these questions. And like, we do these forms that connect us and give us, facilitate our being grounded and connecting and being engaged, present. But, it's the unintentional non-forms in our life that stimulate non-attachment. So just if you have any thought at all in response to that.
Well, I'm mainly just impressed with the way you're thinking about it. It's quite sophisticated, and you're doing exactly what our practice suggests is you're curious, you're taking the backward step, you're investigating your experience and what you've learned, and how you can see things differently. And there's so much in there, I'm not sure where I should land, but I really love the way that you're taking this as a koan, and opening it up. One of the things that you did mention, which really stuck with me, is the way in which we can trust life to be life. We can trust people to be themselves. We can trust the world, the universe completely, which means we don't get stuck on if really awful things are happening, and they have in your life, you don't think, okay, now I can't trust the world. Or if things happen really, really good, so, oh, now I can trust. Trust isn't based on that. I can trust the universe to be what it is, and I trust myself now to respond in a way that's appropriate to take care of myself no matter what happens. That safety isn't about things are happening good and protecting me. Things are gonna happen every way they're gonna happen. Can I take good care of myself and the people around me no matter what happens? So let's look at something in you emotionally as I speak.
Yeah, it's this, or even my next thought was, and can I trust even if I can't take care of myself and the people
Yeah.
around me, no matter what happens? And
Yeah,
there's a certain level of surrender that goes beyond all else, because ultimately we're going to take refuge in pain and death.
yeah, yeah. And and you're now speaking about the difference between that kind of wholesome surrender and unwholesome submission.
Yes.
Yes. So there are things which seem not so happy, but you can wholesomely surrender to them. And there's some unwholesome ways to do it too. Yeah. So, but your continued investigation, like you're doing right now, is what I'm pointing to as really the essence of practice. You're doing a great job.
So it's a form of surrender that's not a defeat,
Yeah.
right?
Thank you for bringing that up so clearly. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else left over? Yes.
So I really appreciate what you said, Jeanette, because what came to me was, what can I trust? I don't trust anymore that things are gonna be okay.
Good.
I don't,
You shouldn't.
but it doesn't mean I don't trust my practice. In fact, it's made it stronger.
Right.
And I just wanted to say, because Peg, at least I've heard you say it a lot, I do trust this, everything is workable. And I just keep going back.
Even when you know the worst thing can happen,
It can,
because you experienced it.
right. Yeah. So,
Yeah. I was speaking to someone recently at home who has lived through your kind of experience. And one of his other children was visiting, and that child with their partner were going to the beach, and they were taking hikes, they were doing all this stuff, and he said he was so agitated and wrapped up, he realized, what is wrong with me? Because I can't enjoy them having a good time. And he realized, oh, something bad could happen on my watch. And I said, yeah, like the worst thing you can imagine could happen, right? And he said, yes. He said, so I couldn't trust. I started taking on this personal and contracting, instead of saying, I'm going to love them and encourage them, and it will go like it goes. And
yeah. It is that experience over and over of, you think, oh, I can trust this is gonna be okay, but that ground is shaking too.
that's right.
Every single place you try and land, it does that.
And that was the Buddhist teaching.
And that is just takes you deeper into the real practice.
Right, exactly. Thank you for your teaching. That's really good. You can cling to the stuff that you think, oh, that's good, and push away the stuff that's bad, but that's not a solution. That's the definition of suffering. That's the Buddhist definition of suffering. Thank you. It's real wisdom and compassion living in this.
And it goes against everything we've been taught. You know, everything we've been taught is striving for what we think is good, and dispensing with what we think is bad.
Ignoring the rest.
Ignoring the rest, yeah. Being stuck in our, delusional world. So I think, without practice, you don't have any way to actually turn that around, What is it you've done?
And that's this endless samsara.
Hamster wheel.